Good morning, everyone. My name is Juan Tricarico. I am Vice President for Sustainability Research at Dairy Management Inc., and I'm also the current president of CAST. I'd like to welcome you all this morning or afternoon, depending where you're located, to CAST's fall annual meeting for the year 2020. We're going to start by providing a very short president's message, and then we're going to jump right into the USDA panel. So I have a few slides that I'd like to share with everybody, and then we'll have a great chance to hear from our USDA colleagues here. First of all, I'd like to say I'm so glad to see so many familiar names in the list of attendees. So it's a pity we cannot be face to face, but definitely, you know, this type of technological solution is allowing us to do this event and even open it up to more people than we usually do. So with that, let me go ahead and jump in immediately into the president's message. So if you don't mind, going to the next slide, please. I do want to start by saying that 2020, saying that it's been a challenging year is definitely an understatement. You can read here the bullet points. I mean, not too much I need to say about the pandemic, not too much I need to say also about the uncertainty. We know that as things shifted, uncertainty continues to be the case. And in many cases, for many organizations, that has meant changing priorities and doing so in a very quick way. In a certain sense at CAST, we have been lucky from the perspective that, yes, this situation, the pandemic and the uncertainty and all of the changes has allowed us to maybe focus more, but we have actually maintained quite a lot of emphasis on the types of things that we do. So that is an outcome of all of this situation that I think has also provided more focus to us. It is, however, changed radically the way we work. And that is something that is just reflected right now in the type of meeting that we are conducting today to kick off the annual meeting. One final element that I do want to remind everyone is that CAST participation is time-bound in nature. We have an opportunity to serve in the different boards within CAST for a period of time, and we're always rotating, members and different board members, directors, representatives, trustees, etc., which is two sides of the coin. On the one side, it makes it difficult sometimes because it's difficult to keep up to speed, but on the other side, it's also refreshing because by design, we get new ideas that way and we get additional energy into the organization as part of the design. So with that, if we go to the next slide, please, I would also like to say that although 2020 has been a challenging year, CAST output has also been superb in 2020. We went ahead and continued with our BORLAG CAST Communication Award. We presented the winner in a little bit of a different way, as we usually do, but being a prime event for CAST, the one that probably gathers the most attention from the community. It was extremely important for us to continue to have the program, continue to have a winner, and continue with our legacy. In terms of publications, this year was also very strong. We had 5 commentaries and 5 issue papers. We have also translations of some of the previously published papers per request of different organizations. We have also included some new types of products, informational products, that I think not only have they been valued so far, but I think they may become even more valuable as we move into the future, and those are study guides. We've hosted a total of 12 webinars on new publication releases, plus the BCCA events, and now, of course, the annual fall meeting. Once again, this ability to interact with others through webinars has its own challenges. It's not the same thing as sitting face-to-face like we are accustomed to doing, but it also opened up the opportunity for have quite a larger audience that we can reach via these webinars, and also an opportunity to give contributors to our documents, to our papers, the opportunity to speak in front of people that in the past maybe was not the case because only the chair of the report was invited to Washington, D.C. for the webinar, for the seminars. Finally, I wanted to mention, and you'll hear more about this, that year to date, we have also quite a lot of impressions. The presence of CAST has in fact grown with the pandemic, with the changes that we've had. So in summary, my main point is that the output, even though we had a challenging year, once again, the output was superb. And as president, I'm really excited about this and being able to report this to all of you. Let's go to the next one, please. This year also saw us developing a new strategic plan for CAST for 2021-2025. We went ahead and we built on the success of the previous plan. There's lots of elements from the previous plan that we on purpose kept in place. For example, the strategic implementation teams, and we intend to keep in place. We went ahead and defined stakeholder needs. We defined also some desired outcomes and identified 3 new focus areas that you can see now in this new diagram that talks about content, partnership, and impact. We will talk a lot more about this later in our annual meeting session tomorrow. But most importantly, our intent from the get-go was to build on the successes of the past and at the same time provide flexibility so that we can have a strategic roadmap that leads us from mission to vision. Next one, please. New levels of engagement is what we found the 2020 is capable of. We've already spoken, I've talked a little bit about webinars. We've also had a great opportunity to interact with past BCCA winners and kind of like build a group of past BCCA winners that are definitely very valuable contributors with a lot of potential and a lot of resources for our organization. We also have new opportunities. This particular panel right now today is a great example of how the changes lead to new opportunities by us opening up these type of meetings to a broader audience that we usually do. And then finally, this focus on partnerships that now has become an element in our strategic plan, a focus area. And I want to share two examples, and those are that in this year, we had the COVID-19 response paper that came out in collaboration with the Agricultural and Applied Economics Association. I do want to recognize both Mark Cochran and Jason Lusk for their work on this particular document. This was an example of how we could take something that was happening that required immediate attention and basically turn it around extremely quickly. So another great success, an example that CAST can in fact adapt and be flexible and anticipate or actually capitalize on opportunities as they show up. Another one that I want to mention is the fact that we are able to offer continuing education units through Tri-Societies for CAST webinars. And so that's another alternative here or another illustrative example of how partnerships can build, not only for CAST, but also relationships with members and non-members alike. Next slide, please. So I want to finish this year's President report by reminding everybody that we need to be confident. We have an organization, we participate in an organization that has a strong mission. And this strong mission helps us and leads us to a shared vision. And in this journey, I want to thank everybody for their commitment, for their dedication, and for their excellence in execution. And I want to start with thanking particularly the staff, CAST staff. As I said before, very difficult year, very challenging, and yet CAST staff was there all the time, not worried about anything else, but making sure that in a proactive way we could address everything that was thrown at us. So everywhere from how finances were reshuffled and put in place so that we can have a good financial base, to turning around paper like the COVID paper in a very short period of time to continuing to deliver on a solid pipeline of articles and reports for the year 2020. All of that is because of all of the contributions that the staff members make it at the office in all their roles, and definitely with Kent's leadership. I also want to thank the boards and the of directors, of trustees, of representatives. You know, so much work in CAS gets done through those boards, and you guys, every single one of you, you know, you have your own commitments, either a day job or some other commitments that you have, and yet you do make the time to come in and participate and bring ideas and talk out ideas through, refine them, do what is required in order for CAS to have a solid pipeline, in order for CAS to continue making progress. Obviously, all the members for their membership, for their commitment to our mission. And then also I want to recognize key partners, because there are some key partners. I have a couple of examples here that I want to mention that provide financial contributions that make a big difference for CAS. So CropLife Foundation, for example, with their support of the award, of the BCCA award, United Soybean Board with their general support for publication, and finally the USDA, who is a very important partner for CAS, one with whom we share the desire for decision making based on evidence and science and education, all of those elements that are so important for us and so important for them. So with that, if you can please move on to the next slide, what I would like to do is introduce David Baltensperger, who is the current CAS president-elect. David is also professor and head of the department at the Soil and Crop Sciences Department at Texas Tech University. And he is also the chair of the National Agricultural Research, Extension, Education, and Economics Advisory Board for the USDA. And he has the privilege to introduce our USDA panelists and also moderate our panel session this morning. So with that, welcome everybody to what I believe is going to be a successful 2020 CAST annual fall meeting. And David, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan, and thank you for your leadership this past year. We have great visions going forward, and part of that vision going forward is to develop new papers, new publications, new ideas to follow the long time trend for CAST to add agriculture, science, and technology to our system. We like to be there in the front of discussing technology adaptation for our producers, for our industry, how we can make a better system and stay within the guidelines of a sustainable system, very similar to the USDA overall guidelines. We consider this group to be a very close working panel with us to guide us, to work with us, to be partners, to discuss the tough issues about how we can continue to advance the implementation of technology in our ag system. With that, I want to take just a quick second to share that I'm not with Texas Tech. I'm with Texas A&M. I even have the right colors on and the right tie today. So I share faculty with Texas Tech, but I'm at Texas A&M. The first speaker that we have today will be Dr. Scott Hutchins. He is the Deputy Undersecretary for Research, Education, and Economics. Following that will be Dr. Jacob Young, the Administrator for the USDA ARS, followed by Parag Chitnis, the Acting Director of the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. And the most recent member of the group is Dr. Spiro Stefanou, who will be administering the Economic Research Service. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Hutchins, to share the overview and set the tone for the day. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, David. And Juan, I want to congratulate you as well. As I was looking through those achievements that you outlined for CAST, you know, I think I've had the opportunity to at least participate in one way or the other, or certainly follow all those activities. We love being a partner with CAST. We love when we had the opportunity here in the past and will again in the future to host a number of your events and meetings. I can't think of organizations that are more directly aligned with what the goals have been outlined for USDA than what CAST has. So we very much value every opportunity we have to interact with you, and we appreciate this one today as well. So when thinking about what might be useful and what might kind of set the stage, there are a couple thoughts that I had that I wanted to consider setting the stage with today. One is we have just spent some extended time as a leadership team, the individuals that David introduced, as well as Mr. Hubert Hamer, who leads our National Ag Statistics Service, and Dr. Dion Toombs, who leads the Office of the Chief Scientist. That group forms our leadership team, and we've recently reviewed our progress on activities and fiscal year 20, which is our performance year, starting and finished up in late September. And then we also put together some of our top 10 expected results and goals for fiscal year 21. So I thought what we do is just to give everyone here a sense as to what some of the big things are we're working on for this next year. I would quickly go through those, but really highlight two of those activities specifically, which would be the Ag Innovation Agenda and what we're doing to bring to life the USDA Science Blueprint. So with that, next slide, please. So, you know, one of the great opportunities that I know I've had, and I know my colleagues in USDA appreciate, particularly in the REE mission area, is when you have a like-minded boss, and we do with Secretary Perdue. Secretary Perdue really doesn't travel anywhere or formulate any kind of message unless innovation is part of that message. And the innovation balanced with, of course, the need to develop and implement that for solutions for farmers as well as consumers. And so, you know, he's just a tremendous advocate for that message, which I know is a message that resonates extremely well with CAST and all your members and stakeholders. And so it's a great thing when you have that kind of alignment, and we certainly do. And so I enjoy working very much with Secretary Perdue on these topics. Next slide, please. So this is a bit of a busy slide. I just decided to put it all in one. I'm just going to kind of walk through this very quickly and kind of give you a sense. Some of these are more relevant to your group than others, but I thought you might be interested. This is what we refer to as our top 10 for fiscal year 2021. Each of the agencies will have their own set, and they'll perhaps talk about those today and so forth. But these are the ones that I wanted to hold up that will cut across our agencies that we'll all work on in some way or the other. And we set everything up here within our mission area as either programs, a process, or people, and really trying to identify the big areas of focus within that. So I'm just going to touch on these. The first one I'll talk about is in the program category, and it's to finalize the U.S. Ag Innovation Strategy and U.S. Ag Innovation Agenda and steer REE toward agreed discovery goals. Now, I've got another slide on this one because it is a big component. But bottom line here is that we have just been working through since actually February when the Secretary rolled out the Ag Innovation Agenda, the development of a strategy to create a U.S. Ag Innovation Strategy as part of, as one of 3 work streams that USDA is following, the other 2 being program development and metrics and goals. And they're all completely interrelated. But what we're really focused on is developing a set of discovery goals that the public sector and the private sector can utilize or be informed by that will allow us to take on those biggest opportunities in the Ag Innovation Agenda. And if you're not familiar with this agenda, it was rolled out, as I said, in February by the Secretary, and it really is a big goal for us to increase productivity by 40% and reduce environmental footprint by 50% by the year 2050. You know, there was a lot of discussion coming up with that goal, but the reality is that we felt like we had to make it big and challenging, so that we all got out of our comfort zone and our mindset about how we might incrementally improve, 2% a year, 3% a year. We really want to take this on in a very sincere and transformative way. So I'll say a bit more about that one, but that is a huge goal. We expect to have a first, if you will, kind of working draft of that by the end of this calendar year, by the end of December. And then we'll focus quite a bit of time working on alignment, working with NIFA with their request for application process, working with Dr. Jacob Young and ARS to identify where we can focus and target our considerable skill and expertise within ARS on some of these goals as well. Some of which we already are in progress for. And so it won't be a 180-degree shift in any stretch of the imagination, but it will be an important opportunity to prioritize and focus. The second one is somewhat related, and we also had tremendous progress this past year in FY20, and that is to fully define the theme team priorities for the USDA Science Blueprint and integrate these within the REE science agencies and capability priorities. And again, this is another one I'm going to highlight specifically. These two are the two I'm going to highlight. But in this case, you may recall, and I think even in a previous conversation with you, we rolled out and talked about the USDA Science Blueprint as really representing what we believe collectively as a leadership team. We built it collectively, represents the key capabilities for the next era of U.S. agriculture. And so sustainable intensification, climate adaptation, food and nutrition translation, value-added innovation, and science policy leadership represent those 5 themes. And I'll say a few words about that. We've developed theme teams that cut across not just the REE agencies, but in many cases other agencies within USDA to help us identify what's the vision, what's the narrative, and what are the priorities for each of those themes, so that we can really begin to have an all of department focus on those capabilities. So again, I'll spend a few more words on that here in just a moment. A third one is really one that I'm super excited about, and one that I think will really magnify the impact of REE very broadly, and that is to define and implement what we refer to as a mission-to-mission plan of work for all REE agencies. And we have fantastic relationships in every one of our groups: ARS, ERS, NIFA, NAS. They're all fantastic in terms of working across the USDA. We refer to it as a one USDA approach. But what we find is sometimes those connections, sometimes those needs are identified kind of just through the basis of a relationship, a one-to-one. I know somebody, let me go talk to them. And that's great. We're not trying to dissuade or discourage any of that, but we feel like we can be more intentional and really working with each of those other mission areas that really deeply benefit and depend upon the research and the analysis and the assessments that are done by our agencies in order to formulate their own policies and their own direction. And so whether it's in nutrition or whether it's in trade or whether it's in food safety or any of the other mission areas, NRCS, or really any of the other agencies, we want to be partners at the beginning. We want to talk about what the goals, outcomes, and aspirations are with them. And then we want to go back and deliberately plan to do the work that supports that, so that we get in front of policy development and we're not chasing it with research, as it were. That's just really a key focus. We made some really good, what I'll call emotional and conceptual progress on that this past year, really some tremendous progress and some really stellar examples. But we really want to raise the game. We want to increase the slope of adoption. We want to put a little more process design to it and take it to that next step. So that's a really big effort and focus for us. The next one kind of came out of its box a little bit, but it really is all about science policy, which I know is something CAST and all your stakeholders can appreciate. And what we intend to do is lead a science policy engagement initiative to establish the U.S. and leaders in ag science policy and advocate for science and evidence-based approaches to truly sustainable agriculture, which includes the economic, the social, and the environmental elements of it. In fact, just this morning before this call, Undersecretary McKinney and I were on a call with Europe, and we were having a cordial but yet direct discussion about the U.S. Ag Innovation Agenda versus the Farm to Fork policy that's being developed. And we're quite clear that we're on the side of innovation and that we believe innovation will outlaw us that. So we expect REE, our goal in REE is to be in the middle of all of those kinds of activities and to be really an advocate, but also a champion for the use of science and science-based policy in not just regulatory frameworks, but in really all the frameworks that impact agriculture. Another goal, and this one is more in the process area, is to develop and implement a mission-wide information technology strategy. Now, this is a more internal one, but we just have a tremendous opportunity, and we've already made some great progress within our mission area and within USDA, but we have an opportunity really to modernize further our information technology, whether it's the expansion of remote sensing, for example, to support our national ag statistics surveys in between their other types of surveys so that we can get a handle on things like derechos and hurricanes and things like that in an immediate way. That's one example. Or whether it's through the Science Hub type of networks that Dr. Jacob Chung has been developing and sponsoring and advocating, or any other aspect of that as we, for example, rebuild in some ways and strengthen NIFA. You know, we're really focused on modernization of their grant IT and aspects so that we're best in class in those regards. Bottom line, this is more of an internal one, but I wanted to make you aware that we're really committed to modernizing our IT and our process designs within that context. Another one is to build the next generation of RE management dashboards. And it's not only an IT thing, but this mission area amongst the aid, I would argue, has really been in the forefront within USDA of developing management-based dashboards. And these dashboards are used from everything from helping us understand and manage our fleet to managing our maintenance systems within ARS, which Dr. Chung has been an advocate for, to understanding, for example, the status of the reopening of some of our sites and the timeliness of that. We also are using it so that from a NIFA standpoint, any of our grantees or partner institutions can identify what has been granted to them, whether it's capacity or competitive or what have you. And every single agency has some modernization efforts going on. And that modernization is leading to the development of dashboards that we can not just look at and visualize what's going on, but now we can start to migrate and transition towards using them as true management tools. Incorporation of artificial intelligence to help us identify areas and hypotheses that we should be asking in those kinds of things from a management perspective. So that's been a big effort. We got a great start in FY20, and we're really going to take it over the hill here in 21. We have several key people. You know, people, just like in any organization, just like your own, people is really the key to our success, and not just our own, but working closely with people and partners throughout. And so it's a passion of our leadership team, and we wanted to be represented accordingly. One of the things which you'll recognize, you know, FY19 and 20 was just a major year of transformation for NIFA and ERS as we relocated large portions of those agencies to Kansas City. We've now celebrated in sorts the 1-year anniversary of that. We're very close to being able to occupy the new site in Kansas City. We're so excited about it. The quality and the capabilities of the people that both ERS and NIFA have hired in Kansas City is just phenomenal. And they're really, really fulfilling their mission in a big way. I don't want to steal Dr. Chitnis' thunder here, but I'll just use one example that I've cited a few times. In FY20, NIFA was able to process and deliver 10% more grants with 100 fewer people on exactly or better timeline than it was in FY18, which was before the relocation. So they have really developed that. Now, some of that is the people, but they also took the opportunity to develop new processes through Project Cafe, which we've engaged CAST on, and as I say, modernization of IT. So it's really been a transformation of NIFA, not just a relocation. And I could say the same things about ERS, the responsiveness, the ability to really engage in the mission to mission and pursue that really policy influence and informing is something that has always been a hallmark of ERS, and we've really stepped that up and missed no calendared or congressionally related reports at all in that transformation. But it was a heavy lift. I never will sugarcoat it. It was a tough lift for our folks. It was a tough lift for our organization, but they've really worked through that, and we literally are on the home stretch of bringing it to the vision that the Secretary outlined. Another one is strategic workforce plans for each of the 4 agencies. You know, in ARS, we have a number of really critical vacancies in the hundreds We have vacancies as well, obviously, in some remaining vacancies in ERS and NIFA, and even NAS has a few. So what we really want to do now is focus on transitioning to a workforce plan that includes skill set design, includes developmental aspects and the like, and not just the hiring. Of course, hiring is always a key piece of a workforce plan, but we really want to be very intentional about how we hire, what we need to do to reinforce and really drive progress with the USDA Science Blueprint, and ultimately the Ag Innovation Agenda. So that'll be a focus for our leadership team. We also want to continually develop our own folks and our executives in particular. USDA has embraced a really reinvigorated focus on succession and developmental planning. And we have so much talent within our organization. We want to be able to identify what the next best developmental steps are for that. So for our senior executive service and our senior science and technical service groups, we want to make sure that we're on the forefront of that effort with the USDA and really give our folks experiences and capabilities and skills that allow them to continually grow. So that's one of our people efforts. And then the last one I'll mention is the USDA here is transitioning to a different performance management model and plan. And we just want to make sure that goes well. To us, it's all about recognizing excellence. And we want to make sure that we collectively are working and developing the principles, the process, and the guidance so that all of our managers, and we have hundreds of them, can effectively utilize these tools to recognize and develop their folks. So across this set of 10, and I could have listed another 10, but across this set of our top 10, you know, we really think we're on the right track from a program, from a process, and from a people standpoint. I couldn't be more pleased and delighted with the engagement, the sincerity, the passion that the RE leadership team has for the people, for the process, and for our programs. So I'm just going to hit a couple of these again and a quick highlight. So next slide, please, Melissa. I talked about the Ag Innovation Agenda and the building, the construction of an Ag Innovation strategy for the U.S. Really, we have built, if you're not familiar with this, I've used this slide before, we really are starting with 4 innovation theme clusters that really are derived from the National Academy's report on science breakthroughs for food and agriculture. You'll recognize these and what's encompassed within them: genome design, so gene editing and all the important tools that would be developed from that. Digital automation, prescriptive intervention, and systems-based farm management. So don't consider these as buckets so much as a continuous area of focus that we think holds tremendous promise for agriculture. And then over the last, 6 months, really, we have really been working with all of the ag organizations. We published a request for information in the Federal Register so anybody could contribute to really understand what the community, what we call the voice of the customer, sees as the biggest opportunities. The biggest opportunities to get to that goal of increased production by 40 and decreased footprint by 50%. So we've been working to sort through all that and put it into a framework and a context that represents discovery goals, research goals for the public sector. And then we just know there's going to be a lot of great information there that will inform the private sector, both, the big multinational organizations, as well as the startups and all the others. And our goal, of course, is that far right, which is to have everybody aligned on working on those biggest opportunities for agriculture. We also think it'll help paint a vision for others, appropriators and others, in terms of what we think the future is for agriculture and how we think that we can have an impact on helping us bring that future closer in a big way, and really focus on these big challenges transformationally that involve the farmer, that involve agriculture, and don't just work around or regulate it the way, for example, the Farm to Fork program in Europe does. So excited about this. Again, so excited that we have a leader in Secretary Perdue who's passionate about it, and that he's put really the entire USDA focus across the 8 mission areas on making sure that this comes to pass. Next slide, please. But the capabilities we need within USDA, these 4 agencies, as well as the other agencies, really is about building and extending these capabilities to support those product goals. So sustainable ag intensification, regenerative ag, and all the things that go in it, that is by far the biggest component. Focus those on those discovery goals. Ag climate adaptation through breeding, through intercropping approaches, through things like this. In fact, David mentioned he chairs the NAREEE board, and that board has been doing a review of our focus and effort with climate adaptation. So we've been able to share a lot of the work that's going on there, and it is extensive. food and nutrition translation, so passionate about where this can take us, particularly when we think about the concepts of precision nutrition and how that can really change the paradigm on helping us, for lack of a more elegant way of saying it, getting the attention of individuals in terms of behaviors and what they're susceptible to and so forth. Really looking at individual genetics and how that might drive us to some nutrition and recommendations. And then a hallmark of USDA, ARS in particular, has been value-added innovation, the creation of new products, whether it's a red spinach, or whether it's a development of ways to process food to reduce food loss and waste, whether it's bioethanols, particularly for things such as jet fuels, or whatever it might be. Between ARS and NIFA in particular, we just have tremendous capability to work, to license, to partner with the private sector, to continue to add innovation in this way, whether it's an entirely new crop we're trying to understand, like industrial hemp, or really all the way down to products. And then I've already said several things about ag science policy leadership, but just so key, critical for all of these capabilities, critical for the ag innovation agenda, that we are always standing tall for science, that we're always being the advocate for making sure that we have evidence-based policies, that we're working to develop what's right for not just the farmer, but for the consumer, and really trying to ensure that this policy works for it. It'll have and will have tremendous positive impacts on trade harmonization and removing trade barriers and being able to harmonize and develop the goals that we have collectively. Next slide, please. And that's really what I wanted to cover to set the stage. David, I know there's a lot there, and I'm looking forward to my colleagues in REE to provide a bit more detail and a bit more scope to their specific activities. So David, I don't know if you want to take any questions now, or you want to go through the whole set and then come back as a panel.
Let's do the panel thing at the end.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I believe that Dr. Hutchins has set a wonderful foundation in discussions concerning the Ag Innovation Agenda and the Science Blueprint. I am Chavonda Jacobs-Young, and I'm the administrator for the Agricultural Research Service. And so today I'd like to focus on our innovation agenda in ARS and to talk a bit about the programs and initiatives that we have underway that are very much in support of the Ag Innovation Agenda and the Science Blueprint. I will also talk briefly about perhaps the timeliest topic for all of us, ARS's continuation of work during the pandemic and our work on the SARS-CoV-2 coronavirus and implications to agriculture. So most of you are familiar with ARS, so I believe that this is just a refresher for most and perhaps an introduction to others. I always believe it's a great idea to set the stage with the snapshot of our numbers and more information about ARS. So President Abraham Lincoln established our research mission within USDA in 1862 and mandated that the new department should conduct practical and scientific experiments to improve the quality and security of U.S. agriculture. So ever since then, ARS has been carrying out that mission. The organization we know as ARS today actually was formed in 1953, but still carries out the original mission. Today, we have around 2,000 research scientists and postdocs working in over 90 locations throughout the United States and 4 overseas labs. In FY20, we received $1.4 billion from the US Congress for research, and we work each year here nationally in the headquarters offices in Beltsville, Maryland, to plan our almost 670 projects across the country. So they're planned nationally, working with stakeholders, many different stakeholders, and then the projects are implemented across the country. So every place you see one of the white dots on this map is an ARS locations, and a third of our labs are co-located on university campuses. So our land-grant university partners are critically important to the overall success of our programs. So this slide, I want to talk to you a little bit about modernizing scientific infrastructure. And so today I'll share a bit about our efforts around buildings and facilities, and I'll talk a little bit about our IT modernization. And so first I'd like to talk to you about some of the efforts we have underway in terms of investing in modernized scientific buildings and facilities for the agriculture research enterprise. ARS has about a $5 billion portfolio of facilities across the country, and the average age of those facilities is over 47 years old. And so we know how critically important it is to invest in modernized facilities to support the innovative research that our scientists are conducting every day. So over the past 6 years, we have prioritized our research investments using a capital investment strategy to really invest in those facilities that are in the poorest condition that are housing some of our most important research. Our efforts have resulted in a little over $1 billion in new facilities or modernization projects across the country. We're very excited about that. And what's most exciting is that many of our projects are on our co-located campuses. So not only do they benefit ARS scientists, they also benefit our land-grant university scientists and the many students that are on the land-grant university campuses. And perhaps our largest project, the National Bio and Agro Defense Facility. So drawing on 65 years of experience at New York's Plum Island Animal Disease Center, we're working with the Department of Homeland Security to bring online this new facility, our first BSL-4 facility. The facility is owned by USDA. It will be operated by ARS and housed with both ARS and APHIS scientific workforce. We're extremely excited about MBAF, and it is located on the Kansas State University campus there in Manhattan, Kansas. And so we are working very hard to maintain our timeline and to be able to bring this facility online as the jewel of agriculture for the United States in our efforts to protect agriculture. So another facet, as I mentioned, is the investments in our IT infrastructure, because I believe that cutting edge scientific infrastructure is critical for the advancements we want to make in agriculture. And so our project is called SciNet, and we've worked to increase research capacity by providing our scientists with access to high performance computing clusters, cloud computing, improved networking for data transfer, and most importantly, training. And so we started this network, started at Iowa State University right there on the campus. We work very closely with Iowa State personnel. And so that's where we got our start. And now we have 6 hubs and now 7 across the country. Our latest hub was announced just a couple of weeks ago on the campus of Mississippi State University. Atlas was added to the network and significantly expanded the capacity of our scientific network. This is an Internet 2-based network, and it really is changing the culture on how we create, share, visualize, and store data. And so we're very excited about SciNet. And so we've also developed some in-house challenges to push our ARS scientists to think outside the box. The world-renowned X Prize inspired ARS X, where ARS teams compete to develop high-risk, high-reward proposals targeting complex and motivating research issues. This first year, we funded 3 projects on the challenge, Stopping Agriculture's Next Disruptive Pest or Pathogen. 3 projects were selected after a hackathon, and they're very exciting. And I hope that we're going to be able to quickly go forward with ARS X 2021. So the 3 projects selected this year, one is a handheld device accessing plant health. The second is a novel feed-based therapeutics for honeybees. And the third is delivering real-time crop pest or pathogen immunity. And so this was an exciting process in that it really forced our scientists to think differently, to pitch their ideas differently, and to have a set of external judges come in and judge the project in the final hackathon. and make the selections. So this was an exciting project this year. And our other project is ARS Synergies, and it was previously called Grand Challenges. And it's modeled after the CAP projects in NIFA. And this program seeks to foster research collaborations that cut across disciplines, projects, and locations. We want to develop large-scale synergistic and system-level solutions to complex problems in agriculture. The solutions by 2025, we will increase quality agriculture production while reducing our environmental footprint. And so these are two very exciting programs that really allow our scientists to step outside of their assigned projects in ARS and work together in creative and entrepreneurial and innovative ways. So we're very excited about these two projects. Well, we call them initiatives. And so the next initiative is Breeding Insights. So ARS and Cornell University, we established the Breeding Insights program in 2018 to develop and support open source breeding tools for genomic selection in specialty crops and animals. So this effort was envisioned by ARS scientist, National Academy of Science member, Dr. Ed Buckler. And it brings tools that were developed to address large agriculture crops and help them be more profitable to our smaller specialty crop species. So the tools were funded by Bill and Melinda Gates and the National Science Foundations and others. And now we're being able to apply that technology, that knowledge to our first round of species, which features salmon and trout, sweet potatoes, blueberries, grapes, and alfalfa. So this is a very exciting project, and we are once again bringing scientists together from across the country to work together on really shorten the time from discovery to dissemination. And so last year, we set up a virtual artificial intelligence center of excellence to develop strategic leadership on the application of AI in agricultural research. This Center of Excellence looks for practices, techniques, and tools that potentially could be implemented throughout ARS. The center also focuses on training, strategic hiring, and recruitment, as well as finding those partners in industry and academia who will work with us on our research mission. Just as important, it defines, collects, and evaluates the metrics we need to measure the impact of artificial intelligence throughout ARS. So another initiative started last year and rocketing out of the gate is Partnerships for Data Innovation, or PDI. It was started to bring together modern technology at the forefront and bring it to agriculture. We're working with several partners, including Microsoft and Esri, to develop a suite of tools for data integration, standardization, automation, accessibility, analysis, and visualization. This is another important step in our efforts to deliver data-driven tools to producers and consumers. And this public-private partnership has already won a substantial award this year. And so we're very proud of PDI. And so the next initiative is the Innovation Fund. And the Office of Technology Transfer, or OTT, helps to bring ARS research to the marketplace. The dissemination of our findings, our solution, our science is a part of our mission. So this is very, very important. So in 2016, I started the ARS Innovation Fund to enhance the commercial potential of ARS studies and findings. This program funds projects up to $25,000, and we want to help them facilitate the adoption of ARS research by industry, university, and other stakeholders. So we've had 10 rounds of this program in 3.5 years. We've received over 435 proposals and funded 140. An excellent example of this program is the investment of $15,000, just $15,000 to conduct a market study on the industry's perspective on breeding better bees. The investment resulted in a contribution of $420,000 from an industry collaborator. And so that's just one example of the work that's come out of the Innovation Fund. The Innovation Fund has also won an award from the Federal Laboratory Consortium in the way it's working to really bridge the distance between the conclusion of the research and dissemination. So next, I want to switch gears just a little bit to talk about our approach to operations during the pandemic. So ARS has taken the approach of permitting essential research to continue to minimize impact to our key milestones. The safety and health of our employees is the primary concern and guiding principle for research leaders as they make schedules and decisions about who is on site performing work. So far, our research leaders have reported minimal impact to long-term research goals. And so since March, all of our essential employees have been on site, working on site. And in July, we permitted the additional conduct of research that can be done safely. And so not only do we have essential work underway, we've also permitted work to continue that is, we're able to have social distance and have the proper PPE. And so across the country, we are working in stages to really continue to support our mission while keeping the safety of our employees as our priority. So this is very, very important. We're also working with our university partners to facilitate access to our co-located laboratories. And we're doing very well in terms of working across the country as partners, as a big team. And so we're also continuing research on key questions related to COVID-19. And just basically, key question one was, can domestic animals become infected with SARS-CoV-2? And if so, can the infected domestic animals transmit the virus to other animals and or humans? And we were able to conduct research in both Athens, Georgia, and Ames, Iowa, to determine that common poultry do not pose a threat to SARS-CoV-2, that they do not become infected with the virus. And so in Ames, Iowa, we were able to conduct research on cattle and swine, and in both we determined that SARS-CoV-2 does not pose a threat. At Kansas State University, partnering with our colleagues there, we were able to confirm that mosquitoes and biting midges do not form a threat to SARS-CoV-2. And currently we're conducting some work around the wildlife domestic animal interface. And so we'll be sharing those results as they become available. And so with that, I'm going to end my comments today. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you, and turn it over to my colleague from ERS. And Melody, help me get back to the right slide. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm Spiro Stefanou. I started my duties as ERS administrator at the end of August this year. So we're ramping up here, finding it comfortable to drink through a fire hose after several weeks now. If we go to the next slide, please. So this is the mission of the Economic Research Service. Our job is to anticipate the trends, the emerging issues across the whole spectrum of agriculture, food, environment, rural America. And our focus has been on conducting high quality research. So our job is to provide this trusted, objective, timely statistics and research to inform decision makers. And we cover a breadth of the sector, from rural communities, as you can see, to farming, markets, environment, consumers. So think of us as farm to fork on steroids. We have 3 research divisions: the Food Economics Division, the Resources and Rural Economics Division, and the Markets Trade Economics Division. I'll speak a little bit about those as we go. The next slide, please. So we have a wide range of themes. Right? We look at farm finances. We do a lot of forecasting of commodity markets, cost return surveys. We look at productivity issues. We look at rural economic development, and we are embracing the mission to mission agenda here. We are we provide expert analysis on trade, on food safety, nutrition, conservation, environment, and climate. And going forward, we're going to take a more focused approach to these collaborative activities across the mission areas. As Dr. Hutchins mentioned, we have some point-to-point contacts. Historically, Food Economics Division has worked closely with Food Nutrition Service and a couple of other groups, agencies. We're looking to elevate that to be a lot more systematic. And I'm doing a walk around to all our partners and other agencies to see how we can collaborate. One of the other approaches, just to build on something Dr. Hutchins mentioned, was public-private partnerships. So the bridge between us on the economic side, between the public and private side, needs to be upgraded. It's more of a little rope bridge, footpath right now, and we want to make it a lot more substantial where both sides benefit. So we think there are a lot of great opportunities, and the move to Kansas City is going to be one vector that'll help us start to establish a lot of these on-the-ground relationships and start to have these conversations and collaborations. The next slide, please. One thing about the Economic Research Service, like NAS, is we are one of the 13 principal federal statistical agencies that are covered by OMB. And there are a set of policy directives, and being a part of this system carries a very special set of responsibilities. But the highlight is that ERS is a data-driven agency. We invest in a wide range of data products. Some we construct, others we use from other federal agencies, and still others we purchase from private sector vendors. So go to the next slide, please. Just to kind of give you these guiding principles of being a federal statistical agency. These are the four stated principles. But the one I'd like to really emphasize is the trust factor. We have data providers who trust us to use the data they provide us in a responsible way and protect their privacy. We have data users who trust us because they can't verify the data that they're going to be using for their analysis. And stakeholders trust us that we do the analyses appropriately for the data products and services we provide. So in addition to providing these specific innovations and products, is that the expert analysis that we provide using these analyses. So unlike my colleagues in ARS, who are really great at developing innovations and finding solutions to challenges, economists are not very good at solutions. But what we really are good at are finding insights, to understand the policy challenges, and then translating these insights to craft effective policy mechanisms that can address the current and emerging challenges. And that's where our role is really prime as a policy informing operation. So as we understand, how these markets work, we also understand when they don't work, and how decision makers, whether they're in the public sector or private consumers, farmers, how they interact within this incentive-based paradigm. Next slide, please. So just as a kind of final remarks here, ERS is going to be building on these strengths, and what we're doing is using these products we develop and looking to develop new products to expand the need to promote science communication. And we focus on three core goals. We want to be relevant, we want to be responsive, and we want to be focused on broadening our range of outreach products and branding. And just to mention these, we produce a number of different products. Staff analyses are, for those who aren't familiar, are typically internal analyses used within USDA to inform policymakers. And we're looking to develop a branded type of staff analysis that can be used even outside of USDA if USDA policymakers are so inclined. We're looking to develop some intermediate products that are relevant, that can be timely, and these are going to be highlighted as economic briefs. We have a working paper series we started up related to COVID in particular, and we're looking this as a vehicle of trying to communicate some emerging themes, emerging analysis on contemporary themes that are hitting us at the moment. We have Amber Waves, which is a magazine type format, and we're looking to revision how to communicate this kind of material, which is directed to the lay audience. And we have charts of note, which many folks really enjoy as kind of a brief snapshot of a theme, of a topic. Oh, I'm sorry. We have charts and notes, which are a brief theme, just in one bite to communicate something interesting and something folks may find of value. So with that, I'll stop, and I probably should have spoke up a little earlier. Sorry for any confusion.
Thank you. And we'll move to the last speaker for this morning.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. So again, I'm Parag Chitnis. I'm the Acting Director for NIFA, National Institute for Food and Agriculture. And let me try to share the screen.
That worked.
Yeah. It stopped again. Sorry about it. Yeah. Now I think it worked. Yeah. Sorry, yeah, so thank you for the patience. So I'm going to talk about some of the NIFA's research priority and where we stand. As Scott just mentioned, FY 2020 was really truly transformational for NIFA. We have new places. We will be, our headquarters remains in DC. Where we will be located in the Wheaton building, where the USDA main offices are, where the secretaries or the secretaries' offices are. And we will have most of our staffs from the next week in 805 Pennsylvania Avenue in Kansas City, which is about more 1,000 miles from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in DC. So that's where we will be. We will have about 300 positions there, but we are hiring. We still don't have those number of people. What we are having is currently about 200 people on board, additional people coming on board, which have been hired there. As I think the paperwork goes, as well as in some cases, their semester teaching responsibilities, and they will be joining us. Some of the highlights include we had 2 recruiting events in Kansas City. We have hired new national program leaders for leading our science, and some of the science division directors we have hired include people like Kevin Kefart, who was Vice President of Research at South Dakota State University, or Peter Mochavalli, who is a soil scientist, a professor from University of Missouri, Columbia, or Deb Hamonic, who was Associate Vice Chancellor for Research at University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Susan Sluka was Associate Director of Extension at Montana State University. So we are getting really quality people, really highly accomplished people from all over the country to work here in Kansas City at NIFA. In 2020, the new NIFA also got the job done. We are efficient, as Scott mentioned. All one-year awards we processed on time, and we processed over 200 more awards in FY20 than we had processed in FY19. So even though we are not fully staffed, we are processing awards really fast, and that's because of some of the changes in the process, improvements in the process, as well as staff really dedicated in getting the work done. So we focus on our core work. We are resilient in COVID-19, working from home. We remotely hired and onboarded over 90 people by now. And we also responded to new needs and opportunities because of COVID-19. We have now invested about $25 million in new projects that are addressing needs of agricultural research, extension, as well as education. For example, grants for positive youth development, 4-H, for like 4-H at home, or training of farm workers or food service, food processing workers, so that the outbreaks on farm or in food processing plants can be minimized. So those are the kinds of projects that have been already funded and going on right now. So the new NIFA had changes in the places, people, processes, and we are also looking at new programs to be implemented in FY21. So what kind of science we want to focus on in 21? As Scott mentioned, that there are these 10 goals for FY21. NIFA's FY21 goals include aligning the NIFA program priorities to the priorities of USDA and the White House, developing human resources for agriculture industry as we need them, the diverse human resources that we need. So focusing on how we can increase participation of minority serving institutions in our programs, as well as focusing on how we can really train students in the fields that there are jobs in the future. We are also continuing to enhance our interactions with other agencies inside USDA, outside USDA, as well as our partners, land-grant universities, and stakeholders such as commodity groups that serve different commodities. There are, of course, the process and people goals, and I won't talk about it at this point, but I will talk more about how we are kind of looking at science. Our process goals are guided by, we had a stakeholder input, now we call it Project Cafe, where people gave about 900 comments about how we can improve processes to serve them better. And that's what we are using for modernizing our systems as well as revising our policies. So the key drivers for our science in the future come from Congress, the President and USDA leadership, as well as stakeholders. And that's what is synthesized to come up with NIFA's science priorities. So for Congress, we get budgets. So FY20, about $1.75 billion budgets in annual appropriation, as well as mandatory funds was distributed by NIFA. And we get the checks for like 64 different programs, so that the budget lies in NIFA's budget, giving about 2,300 awards, and some of the new programs that were also implemented by NIFA. So these programs range from over 400 million for AFRI to $1 million or $2 million for very small programs. So the second key driver so Congress gives us their priority through their appropriations process or in the Farm Bill. The key drivers for NIFA science also come from the president and USDA. And we have been addressing those, and we talked about a couple of those already in Scott's presentation. USDA Science Blueprint is one, Ag Innovation Agenda is another one. We are also looking at what Office of Management Budget, as well as Office of Science and Technology Policy of the White House are putting out as a guidance to science agencies. And last year for FY21 goals that looked at American security, industries of the future, energy and environment, and so on. Of which industries of the future include AI, that is artificial intelligence. It also includes quantum sciences and biotechnology. And those are the areas that we are focusing on, AI and biotechnology. For example, recently there was an announcement from the White House about investing of $1 billion in research institutes to advance industries of the future. Of that $1 billion, 40 million came from NIFA for 2 AI institutes, one at University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign and another one at UC Davis. And those are really looking at how we can apply artificial intelligence to our agricultural data to solve problems of different types. Like, for example, Urbana-Champaign Center is looking at high throughput phenotyping data, as well as the data from farmers' field to really kind of combine the information to come up with predictive models that will be useful for the farmers. We are incorporating the Ag Innovation Agenda as well as Science Blueprint themes in our budget requests as well as in our RFAs. For example, the AFRI Sustainable Agricultural Systems RFA, which will be about $150 million, the next one that will come in the next few weeks that will be released, that is framed based to address the themes of the USDA Science Blueprint Agenda. The themes are sustainable agricultural intensification, that includes labor issues, because we have heard from stakeholders that's an important topic for if you are growing specialty crops or if you are in dairy business. The labor issues are really important. How do you have technology that can alleviate the labor problems in this industry is important. Soil health, land stewardship, that are also important topics for many of the agricultural industry. And then protection from losses, as well as resiliency and robustness of agricultural systems. The next one is agriculture climate adaptation, food and nutrition translation, as well as value-added innovation. Those are the themes of the USDA Science Blueprint that will be addressed in AFRI Sustainable Ag Systems. In other RFAs, we will have data, automation, gene editing, as well as AI applications in ag highlighted. We will continue to participate in the AI Institute competition, and we hope to find at least 2 in the next competition they will have. Other part that we are doing is also highlighting these areas in our education and workforce development programs. That includes postdoctoral fellowships or graduate fellowships or research and extension experience for undergraduate grants. And they have been doing this data science, AI, automation, genome design last couple of years, and more applications are coming in that area where undergraduates get experience in those areas. We have started new agriculture workforce training grants at community colleges last year. And next year, we plan to start non-formal education grants for technology in agriculture so that AI, automation, and gene editing can be incorporated in the experiences students get in youth development programs like 4-H. So we talked about how Congress gives us instructions, how administration gives us instructions into science priorities and how they influence how we invest funds. Another important place where we learn from what science priority comes from stakeholders, whether it is scientists or commodity groups. What we have been hearing is there is a need to study agricultural systems in a holistic way. The systems need to be productive, and as we have heard it before from Scott, about 40% increase in production is something that is aimed by 2050. They also need to produce what we need, and there have been studies where people talk about how if we really use the nutrition guidelines to eat, we don't have sufficient part, like say fish or specialty crops like fruits and vegetables produced to feed everybody in the world. Now, same thing is, of course, just being productive is not sufficient. The agricultural systems need to be profitable for everyone who is involved in those systems. They need to be environmentally sustainable. And the goal for agricultural innovation agenda is 50% reduction in the environmental footprint. And they need to be, and the COVID-19 experience has shown us that they need to be resilient and robust as a system, so they can adjust to the, adapt to the disruptions that may be caused by natural or intentional factors. So these systems needs to be studied as with our holistic view. And we have data now coming all across so that we can analyze systems and then come up with some predictive solutions for farmers, processors, consumers, as well as researchers. And that's the kind of strategy that is now guiding us in many of our programs. I talked about Sustainable Ag Systems program, but also in organic agricultural research and extension program, as well as our specialty crops research initiative, really looks at this and promotes this holistic view of agriculture where different disciplines come together to solve agricultural problems. There are some other specific areas that we are hearing from you. Carbon sequestration is one, where how can we make agricultural industry carbon neutral by increasing the carbon use in like the sequestration. Well, there is also, I think, the discussion about the long-term research and data needs. There's a lot of historical data. ARS has it, as well as all agricultural experiment stations have it, as well as there are long-term future experiments and how do we support them. And then there are talks about new design for agricultural extension in this new world. There is a discussion going on in consultation with ECOP, the extension directors across the country, as well as University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign in particular, about coming up with solution, hearing from the stakeholders what kind of extension services they need in the future. And then using data, AI, and other technologies to deliver it more efficiently in the future. Another need that we are kind of hearing from stakeholders is about how do you accelerate convergence for agricultural innovation, bringing different sciences together to solve problems that need to be solved for agriculture. And for accelerating innovation, really what is desirable to users is what needs to be seen, what is possible with technology, and what is viable in the marketplace. We have individual programs that are addressing these different areas that we have been supporting. What we really need are mechanisms where we can bring it all together to really accelerate innovation. How we have been supporting research, whether it is foundational or applied. We have been supporting extension for producers and consumers. We don't have as much in the area of how do we really connect what we have been supporting through research and extension through industrial innovation. One of the experiments we have kind of done is what is called this hub that has been funded at now Kansas State University to how do you stack desirable traits in elite lines, where the university, as in the coordination with International Vigil Partnership, are coming together along with all the wheat commissions in these areas and companies, seed companies that are interested in this area, and all the winter wheat breeders, public breeding programs at universities as well as ARS. And what they are trying to do is have those desired traits, validate them, precision phenotyping with high throughput phenotyping, pre-breeding, and then field evaluation in relevant environments. And at the end, novel high-yielding germplasm is distributed to all the participants, including public as well as private like companies. And those, so essentially introducing those desired traits combinatorially and in an accelerated manner to elite cultivars. And that's what they are trying to do, where industry, universities, ARS scientists, they're all coming together, and the commodity groups are coming together to accelerate this process. If there are any other models like this, that's something we would like to try. In what I want to end with is this new NIFA, which we are still building, is being transformed to serve you better and try new innovative ways of serving you better. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all the team. We appreciate the overview of the REE agencies. We appreciate what they are doing and how they are making a difference for agriculture in the US and around the world. At this point, I'll open it up to questions. And we had a question in the chat, Chavonda. I tried to respond, but I think I only responded to myself about when the facility in Manhattan is going to be open and ready to go to replace Plum Island.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Great question. So we'll begin sort of a soft transition next year. So in April, USDA will begin operation of the central utility plant, wastewater treatment plant, and take over security for MBAF. And we expect that we will have the initial full capacity around August 2023. So you did a pretty good job, Dave. So so you were right on. You're on target. We expect August 23 is still the date.
Okay. Are there other questions from the audience? If you take an opportunity and put them in chat, that will work very well. While we're waiting to see if any others show up in the chat, I wanted to ask a question, Parag. Maybe you could describe a little bit how the program, I always call it the one the USDA is using to imitate the ARPA-E, but the new major grants program, how you are developing that and what kind of projections you have for the future of that.
Yeah, so AGARDA is the program that probably you are referring to, which is ARPA-E kind of equivalent or DARPA equivalent for agriculture. That it was in the last Farm Bill. It is assigned to REE, Office of Chief Scientist, and right now it hasn't been appropriated any funds yet. So that one hasn't been funded yet. But what we are trying to do within the funds that are available at NIFA, figuring out a way, working with our partners internally like at USDA or outside, which mechanisms can we use to bring industry and university scientists or ARS scientists together to really accelerate innovation.
Okay, thank you. Kind of for everybody, but one of the questions we have as a CAST group, and it came from an individual, but how can CAST help your particular agency? And we'll kind of go around and give each of you a shot to answer that. But let's start with Parag, since he's live.
One of the ways I think we could probably get help from CAST is their reports have been very valuable in getting feedback from what stakeholders are thinking about. Some of the ideas we were thinking in terms of writing RFA for this robustness and resiliency of our food systems, that part of it came from the recent CAST report when they quickly put together for COVID-19 responses. And those are the kinds of things that help us figure out what stakeholders needs and thinking about in terms of the future directions and the needs in agricultural sciences, which we could then address through our RFAs.
Okay. There was a little bit of a follow-up question on that, Parag, and while you have it, I'll let you address that.
Yeah.
Is there a blueprint for creating hubs like the one that was highlighted?
Yeah, so we did kind of create this as a pilot, and it was open to all crops, but they succeeded primarily because they may be already in a place where they were thinking about it. After a year or two, once we see how it is progressing, because they had to now work out, and they're already doing it, all the details with IP and those kinds of things, we will be then able to then amplify the model if we see that it is going to be successful.
Others on how CAST might partner better to be supportive.
Well, Dave and Kent, you guys are aware that ARS scientists are just so intimately involved in a number of the projects working with CAST. And so we have a longstanding partnership, and I think continuing to focus on the high priority issues that help us all be better informed about many of the scientific areas, I think we're already on the right track for a great partnership.
And I'll chime in here from an ERS perspective. Lots of times we talk about innovations, we're talking about the supply curve. Well, there's a demand curve as well, and the CAST work and their publications and studies, help provide some insight into what the preferences are of consumers, preferences are of producers, what direction a lot of these innovations are going to take, and what folks want to see in these innovations. So those kind of overview studies are very, very useful for us.
Dr. Hutchins, anything to add?
Yeah, I think, David, they've covered it well. I would just say, CAST is in a unique position, one that we can't always be in ourselves, to really speak with a megaphone, right? And to speak loudly. The reports that you create, the work that you pull together from your various constituents and colleagues is fantastic work. But we really need to have groups that are willing to stand up for science and willing to speak loudly, often in a loud forum, for agriculture and for science and for technology, and to be able to talk about the benefits as well, to offset what people often tout as the risks. So groups like CAST and others can really play a very critical role in because you come from it from a science literacy standpoint, you come to it from a knowledge standpoint, and you come from it from a practical standpoint as well, on how we're going to solve these challenges in a practical way. So, I think we're all united in that regard, but you have some unique capabilities and equities and opportunities that we might not be able to fully utilize ourselves in that way.
Thank you. I see there was one question on the dairy facility at USDA FRC in Prairie du Sac, Wisconsin, about the timeline for that. Chavonda, is that yours?
It is mine, and I'm going to have an answer for you before we're done. So
Okay.
SharePoint is not cooperating with me right now.
I understand that. Parag, there's a follow-up while she's getting that timeline on, I don't know whether you saw it, but it says, could you please address the fact that only 6 million earmarked for 1890 institutions to be shared among 18. And it talks about how do you build the infrastructure and the capacity with that situation.
Okay, so I think the question probably is related to the Centers of Excellence program for 1890 universities, because otherwise we provide over $200 million for 1890 universities. In fact, in 2020, we providing like 30 million more than the year before. So I think this particular question probably is about Centers of Excellence program. And in FY20, only $6 million were provided by the Congress, which is what is being given for 4 Centers of Excellence in 4 areas that were in the Farm Bill. There were 6 areas in the Farm Bill. Since there wasn't enough money, it's being given to 4, and that's for a year. If we do receive funding in FY21, those 4 centers will continue. If we get more money than $6 million in FY21, we'll add the other 2 centers to that pool, and then we will continue funding that on an annual basis as Congress appropriates funds. So those were for those 6 centers that were in the Farm Bill. So it's not being distributed to all universities. These are 6 virtual centers, and some universities are part of some centers, but not others.
Thank you. Recently, CAST published an issue paper on food biofortification, primarily for developing world. My question is if the USDA is addressing food biofortification within the US. Chavonda, that's probably yours.
So that's a great question. In terms of our breeding program, we are working, consistently on developing breeds with higher nutrition. And so are we talking about biofortification of foods themselves or increased nutritional value in plants and animals?
We'll see what comes up. While we're waiting for that, Dr. Hutchins, can you talk more about the sustainable intensification? What are the key elements of sustainable intensification USDA is focused on? As you are aware, we are working on a sustainable intensification and paper and have enlisted engagement with USDA. What areas of sustainable intensification would you suggest we focus on? And that was open to others as well.
Yeah, okay, well, let me take a stab at that, and I would open it up to my colleagues, but just going back to the question on biofortification, I'm not going to answer that one specifically, but I would just say that in this paradigm of precision nutrition that we've talked about, another element of that is what's referred to right there, I think, at your institution as well, David, as responsive agriculture, which is the notion of being able to now not just think about what you should eat based on what you have, but how you might be able to modify the nutrients and the nutrition of what we actually grow. And so I think the potential and the promise of biofortification is much stronger when we move to a paradigm like that, because we'll have a better knowledge of what people actually need. With regard to sustainable intensification, as I said, that's really, of the 5 themes, that is by far the broadest. And there is a lot that's included in there, including, what Dr. Jacob-Jum talked about in terms of, what our goals are at NBAF and in terms of protecting animal health and those kinds of things, certainly invasive species, all of the things that would be detractors. But some of the areas that I think are most exciting today for us to really explore and be able to provide some guidance on and some capability on would be these areas of regenerative agriculture and some of the things that really focus on soil health and the kind of I'll call it the revolution, of you will, that's occurring in terms of having a deeper understanding about those various options. The good thing and the bad thing, depending on your point of view about agriculture, is there are no 2 acres that are the same. And so we have to understand this in a robust way and simplify it in a way that we can identify, how to treat, how to approach each acre, and really enlist the farmers as, citizen scientists of sorts to be able to do experimentation and exploration on their own farm. So what CAS chooses to cover with that, and we're very pleased to be invited and to participate with you on that, is a broad scope, and you'll have to somehow narrow it down. But I think the things that really kind of resonate are the things that will allow us to do what I refer to as the PPC balance, which is production, but production capability. We have to recognize that farmland is there for farm products, and we need that to be ever more productive year in and year out in perpetuity. But we have to deal with the soil, the air, and the water in such a way that we can have that increased productivity in perpetuity, so that we can keep other lands in conservation, in forestry, and in other modes. So doing more with less, it's the age-old challenge, but now we can bring to bear some really fantastic technologies that are on the horizon.
I can add to it. I think the next Sustainable Agricultural Systems RFA that we are putting out focuses 3 areas again in sustainable ag intensification, and that includes what Scott said: the protection from losses like diseases and pests in particular, soil health, that's another area. It also focuses on labor issues in agriculture, because you may have, even with the current level of intensification, there are a lot of times, how can you bring in technology to solve some of the labor issues that are in agricultural production? And I think those are the areas. And then the 4th one is really looking at the resiliency and robustness of the whole system as we intensify. And I think those are the areas that it's currently focusing on. As the report comes out, we will be able to then adjust it in the future versions.
Okay. Anyone else? Kent had a follow-up question. How is the USDA working with other mission areas such as food safety? Dr. Hutchins, you mentioned your work with Undersecretary McKinney around trade, and specifically our risk-based system versus precautionary principle. What do you see happening in Europe and Latin America?
Yeah, well, first of all, in terms of how we're working with other mission areas, that's exactly the core and the reason for the whole mission-to-mission effort. And then that's really a good example, because Chavonda, her team every year meets with FSIS, and they work through these needs analysis and so forth for food safety. Now, she could speak to that, but I think she might say that, it gives them some good leads, but there needs to be a little more discipline and intentionality about thinking which projects we start and why, how we stop projects, and how we ultimately develop a cadence of planning and implementation. So that's speaking to that. And I forgot the second part of your question there, David.
Well,
other countries?
Yeah, the trade trade by precaution versus trade by risk.
Yeah. So what we're advocating, obviously, is a risk proportionate approach, a risk assessment approach, which the United States has adopted, as opposed to a hazard only approach. And so, we're providing the basis for that, or we're working to provide the basis for that across the U.S. government. It's not just USDA, obviously EPA, FDA, others are involved in that kind of paradigm, but really trying to help people understand the difference between a hazard and a risk, which includes the exposure components of things in that space, And then to really just take on head on where there is groups that believe that you know, everything starts off as a negative, as a bad, which is what the precautionary principle says, and really work through a deliberate process to demonstrate how technologies can be developed successfully. If they're not, ultimately people will quit trying. We won't find replacements for these things everybody says they want to replace if we can't provide some sort of mechanism, some sort of approach in order to help innovators get these things ultimately on the market, whether it's, you know, whatever, regardless of what the technology is, whether it's something the FCC has to be able to license from a digital standpoint, or whether it's something that's chemical, or whether it's something that's biological. You know, if we're going to truly have an innovation strategy for agriculture and the government, the U.S. government, we're going to have to get everybody aligned on the fact that whatever we have today, we can make better, and we need to focus on that. And whatever we can make tomorrow, we can make better yet. And so it's a continuous process, and not just incremental, but also transformative. One good example, for example, might be nitrogen. You know, one of the things that may come as a discovery goal, as an example from the Ag Innovation Agenda, is just, you know, hypothesize how you might be able to develop a soil microbiome that fixes nitrogen in corn. Well, that's not going to be here today, but what the USDA and the EPA have partnered on here just recently is a combined challenge and contest to develop enhanced efficiency fertilizers, right? So that's something that's within reach, within the period of time you can see, and you can actually implement that. So we need to view the innovation as a multi-generational approach. And we need to use that as a way to create, honestly, a competitive advantage for the United States, so that other countries can see and see the value and the benefit. I think, you know, that other countries in the world, particularly in Latin America, with maybe just a few exceptions, have really seen and can embrace how the innovations have changed and made them much more competitive on a global basis. And also been very sustainable from the three criteria: financial, environmental, and social.
I'll just follow up on that, Dave. You know, ARS scientists are working with our sister agencies across the department very cooperatively in a number of different fronts. And so we work with the NRCS, you know, around conservation. You know, they have a lot of programs. What type of methodologies can they use to be able to demonstrate impact of those programs? Working with APHIS, you know, in fact, we're housed with APHIS in a number of locations. And working with FSIS to determine the methodologies on how to address some of the questions and the situations that they deal with in their agencies. And so we're consistently working together to provide the scientific data that they need for their actions. I think about one example. We had an issue with wheat in the fall in number. And so our scientists, under the leadership of Jean Lester and many of our scientists across the country, worked until we were able to help find a solution for that. It turned out it was an elevation issue. And so we were able to provide some correction tables, for example, until ensure that producers receive the adequate funding for, you know, for their products. And so our job is to come in, help you figure out how to measure it, and then we move to the next scientific question. And so we're consistently working with our sister agencies under mission to mission, as Scott mentioned. We want to put a bit more formality around that. USDA is a science-driven agency using data-driven decisions, but we don't always articulate that to folks. And we want to be able to show where the data has been used to fortify decisions across the USDA. And so this is very important that we not only continue to partner, but be more deliberate about how we partner and how we communicate that to others.
Thank you.
I have an answer for you on the facility.
Yes.
So we would plan to have that facility online in 2025. And currently we plan to have the design completed next year, and then we'll award a contract, and then the construction will take place and it'll be online in 2025.
Thank you. There was a question, carbon sequestration and reducing the carbon footprint was mentioned a few times. Can you expand upon some of the programs or initiatives that the USDA are involved in to reduce the carbon footprint?
Chavonda,
So,
do you-
Yeah.
or
yes.
Parag?
I can add kind of one example, which is when we talk about soil health for in sustainable ag intensification, one of the area that's where we are focusing on how do we really increase carbon sequestration in these intensified agricultural systems. That's one area that will be in the sustainable ag systems RFA coming in a couple of weeks probably.
Yeah, and
Shall
so
I
I
have
just want to talk
additional?
about some of the efforts we have underway in ARS, and you know that we have we're prolific you know, conductors of science and publishing in the peer review space around this whole topic area. And so we have our long-term agroecosystem research network, which is our 18 agroecosystems across the country, where we're actually having an opportunity to implement some of the practices that we talk about around climate change, carbon storage, and the facets around protecting the environment and reducing our environmental footprint. We get an opportunity to practice those in 18 sites across the country. We take a lot of that information and we work with our climate hubs. We have 10 climate hubs across the country. And all of that is designed to develop, to conduct research, collect the data and information, and then convert that and translate it into tools that the producers and consumers can use. And so we're still very busy doing that work. We've been at it for a long time. We have a lot of data, huge data sets. And so we're just trying to make sure that we also have the infrastructure in place to support all of that translation and dissemination of information.
Thank you. Having just reviewed the climate adaptation work of the program through the NAREEE Advisory Board, I can share that those are really good examples and that the agencies have many others that they have been working on. There was a quick question on, could you give a little more background on what Project Cafe is?
Certainly. What we have done is, like, when Scott Angle was the NIFA director so he talked to different stakeholders starting from last November. And then we had a Federal Register notice to obtain comments about how do we change our processes to serve our applicant and grantee communities as well as our sister agencies better. So we had discussions with the agencies at USDA as well as other science agencies, how we can work with you in a differently, more efficient way or more effective way. We use all of those comments. We got about 900 of those. Those have been then analyzed by a group of staff as well as some of the outside people. We got some contractor help doing it. They came up with some recommendations. Some of the ones that were quick wins, we are already implementing those and communicating in our NIFA, weekly NIFA update, what we are changing. And some of the long-term ones are currently, we are developing plans to implement them in 21. So what we heard from stakeholders will tell us how do we change our processes in the future, or how do we change our systems, including IT systems in the future, which would be like in 21. We will have that information this week. I was checking the site. It's not on yet, but it will be out, where the information about this project as well as its progress will be continuously updated on the NIFA website.
Then there was, thank you. I see there's a question from Dr. Stuckey. Do panelists have additional suggestions for CAST publications, marketing beyond Congress, administration, and stakeholders, briefings, testimony, webinars, media, other stakeholders, etc.? In other words, as CAST addresses the science behind the issues, what other groups that could sign on, buy in, be valuable to support their agency objectives?
Well, David, that's a really broad question, and it's a good question. I think it's probably the kind of thing we would want to take offline and maybe have a more kind of a broader discussion on in that way. But just top of mind, I would say when you start thinking about the topics, one of the things that we will be able to contribute is we will have at some point in time the discovery goals from the Ag Innovation Agenda. And so I think those kinds of things can drive the discussion and get the brains thinking about how we might be able to pursue those collectively together and so forth. That's my top of mind response, but I certainly would open it up to my colleagues here.
That seems like a pretty inclusive list, Dave. It's a pretty full list, and I agree with Dr. Hutchins. You know, if we were to get down into the details of what exactly that list entails, then I think we might be able to have some conversations and identify opportunities. And so I look forward to having that conversation.
And I think that's a way to segue to say that we're always looking for ideas from you. So if you have those and thoughts of where we can partner, get a hold of Kent or I, and we are happy to, you know, work through any individual issue that you might see. That's part of what we want to be able to have as a relationship. Kent asked a question: how can the entire food and agriculture community collaborate to help build trust in science and the safety of our food system?
Well, Kent, you keep asking these prelim questions, you know. They're great questions, but you know, they're really just too broad for any specific area. What I think it does need to happen though, is just like anything else, just like, you know, whether it is the blueprint, you have to start with the outcome goals that you're looking for, and you have to set it around that. And so to me, I think being able to take a super complex topic with a lot of elements the way your question does, and be able to break that down to some specific elements and put groups in charge so they don't work against each other, but they're really aligned toward what they can best do. So what can best be accomplished from, you know, from NIFA, what can best be accomplished from ARS, but at the same time they're both on the same highway going toward that outcome, and ERS and NAS and all the other agencies in USDA and even other departments as well. So the question is too broad for me to give you a specific answer, but just like anything else, when you formulate a strategy, you have to start with a big ambition, and you have to be able to break it down into some things that we can ultimately align some folks on. But here's the challenge: if we try to do everything, at the end of the day, we don't do anything. And so we really do have to choose our battles carefully. We have to choose the ones that are really going to have the biggest bang for the buck for U.S. agriculture in our area.
Yeah, if I could jump in and add one thing. Excuse me, Chavonda. The opportunity here is, you know, we have the food system that's now dovetailing with the environment system, which is dovetailing with the health system, and a lot of social preferences are starting to come to the fore. The great opportunity is that folks want to know more about where their food comes from. They want to learn more about agriculture and the system. And it's a great opportunity to educate the community population about the role of agriculture, rather than just it's a place to go deposit food that you pick up in the supermarket. So folks care about how their food is produced. They care about the impact of how the food is produced. And so those are kind of some opening opportunities to kind of seize on as an organization as CASME do.
I always think about the role that ARS plays in providing data and information to the scientific enterprise. And so part of my role, and the role of all of us across the country, is to do high quality research, have high quality integrity behind our research, and to continue to try to be as transparent as possible about our science. And I think it bears repeating again. That's why I think it's also important for us to articulate that the USDA is a science-based agency, and that the decisions that we make are data-driven. And so is the more we can articulate that to people, to let them know that we are very deliberate about using science and data in our decisions, I'm hoping that will impart more trust in the decisions that we make.
And again, at NIFA, I think through our like agricultural extension programs and programs like 4-H, where I think science is disseminated to youth in informal setting. I think there are ways when we can bring science, technology, or thinking about risk-based, I think, adoption of science versus precautionary principle-based adoption of science. It can be introduced right from the beginning. And that's one of the reasons we'll be offering this program for how do you really introduce technology in this non-formal education kind of scenarios where I think the youth is already familiar with them and knows about how you can evaluate them using risk-based rather than precautionary principle-based approach to adopting science.
Okay, thank you. We're getting close to the wrap up, but one quick question for Dr. Stefanou. There's a little discussion out there the last 6 months or so about that farm system isn't cash flowing. There's a lot of pressure on the farm system, and some commodity prices have gone up recently, but still there's a lot of stress at the farm. What do you see as the biggest thing could be done to help relieve that stress?
Well, that's another broad question. You know, we have a history of seeing farm input prices tend to go up, farm prices tend to fall. And so profitability tends to get pressured as time goes on. What kind of alleviates that pressure, allows for profitability to kind of maintain or even grow, is through innovation or efficiency gains, productivity gains. Productivity gains are really going to come from largely innovation gains. And so the innovation strategy is one hallmark of how to make that happen. Okay, that's a strategy that takes place over some time. In the immediate context, it's to use all the tools available. Farmers should use the tools available to them in terms of farm management, managing inventories, trying to use markets, forward future markets to manage the risk. And that's, farmers have a tough job. It's just not going out, tossing some seed down, some fertilizer down, and enjoying the fresh air. They're working, and they're working a lot more hours a day than most of us. So their creativity is put to the test every year. And I wouldn't say this past year is a whole lot harder than years past.
Thank you. And I would open it up to anybody from the panel that wants to make a closing comment.
So Dave, I'll just quickly say, we still are meeting with stakeholder organizations virtually, still have an opportunity to talk about the issues that are very important to them and to talk about the work we have underway in ARS. And most recently, I had an opportunity to talk with a commodity group. And even with the challenges we faced in 2020, because of the advancements we've made in breeding and some of our management technologies and practices, they still were able to have, record-breaking production. And so we think about what would have happened 20 years ago, and so we can see how far science and innovation have brought us. And so those are always encouraging words to hear, to know that we're on the right track in terms of how we are disseminating the solutions. And in this case, the release of varieties that are just hardy varieties. And so, we're always listening. And so we just encourage people to continue to share their priorities with us.
Others?
Yeah, David, I would just add as well, just to, I guess, to close a little bit. This team in RE and really USDA broadly has just done a phenomenal job of pivoting in 2020 to be able to find ways to get the job done, to get folks hired, to get folks onboarded, to get the work done. And it's really been inspirational. And I see a question here from my friend Chris Stelsig about scientific societies. And when they're open for business and they're open for conferences, you can bet that we'll be participating. We're part of that scientific family with the universities and with the public sector and the private sector. And so we'll be participating. But I would just encourage everybody. I mean, we should always be looking for the silver lining. And I think going forward, even when we're post-pandemic, the fact that we've all learned to do things like this, I don't think we should necessarily walk away from that. I think if you think about a scientific meeting that has an in-person attendance and all the people who may not be able to go, whether they can't afford it, they can't travel or whatever, having now a way to participate in that, I think we can see the participation multiply tremendously. So I think we always have to be looking at the glass half full, and I think there are tremendous opportunities. And I can't say enough good things about how these agencies have really been able to adapt and contribute and do their mission for the U.S. agriculture and the U.S. public during these conditions.
Anyone else? Dr. Stefanou?
Thank you.
If not, just a couple of housekeeping items. The session will restart on a different channel at 1:30. So make sure you hit the right link to get restarted at 1:30. And the speakers, the talks today were recorded and will be posted on our website as we go forward. If you're a visitor, you can contact Melissa Sly at the CAST office for how to get a hold of those. The only other thing to do is to thank the agencies for their efforts in behalf of agriculture. Thank the agencies for their partnership with us and to express our enthusiasm to work together as we go forward for the betterment of agriculture. Thank you to each and every one of you, and we look forward to the future.
Thank you.
Stay COVID free.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.